We're good. Are we ready? Okay, it's 5:30. We'll call this meeting of the Public Works and Highway Committee to order. Attendance shows everybody available is here. Roll call is complete. Approval of minutes for March 5th. I'll entertain a motion. And we could take them together, A and B, if you would like, if there's no problem with that.
I'll move approval of minutes of March 5th and March 17th.
Second.
Any comments or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Public comment? Anybody who'd like to come up and talk about public works things, please feel free.
Oh, look, she knows where I live. That's the trouble. Do you know who I am? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? This is not good citizen comment. I think I'm being roasted. Anyways, Scott Heffley, Old Farm Road, Germantown. I just had, and I apologize because I went into the agenda packet, and when I got to the director's report area, it wouldn't print for me, and I couldn't look at it. And I don't know why it wasn't lining up or something. So I'll probably ask redundant information, and then Matt will tell us what's going on. But anyways, couple questions actually that I have by me, and a couple that people, I don't know, I'm getting emails from residents who know I'm on the Utility Advisory Committee. I don't know, but this is part of that. So Bob's here. That's good. One of them was in regards to the Richfield IGA, and I don't know if you provide information on that or that's more Mr. Cracklow. But how are we doing on that? Where's it going? Because on the Utility Advisory Committee, I mean, we need their water and sewer to help lift our utility. It's an enterprise system. It's enclosed. There's no budget for that. So the only way to get that is to get more water and sewer. And that's a concern because the people voted to do it, but it's not going anywhere. That's not going to get us water and sewer, especially not the upcharge on sewer. So Division Road project, I'm sure you're addressing that. I live in Old Farm, and 2/3 of the sewage goes through Old Farm Lift Station. Luckily, I live on the top of the hill, but I don't feel good for people who live on the bottom of the hill. And if that fails, that would be a catastrophe. And it smells, as you know, but we're doing the best we can. So the sooner that gets done, the better. The upgrade would be lift station. I mean, I know it's a lot of money, but that's one of those things I look at as necessary borrowing as opposed to unnecessary borrowing. So the other thing was, I thought that Ehlers was working on a sewer study. I don't know if we got that back yet. Maybe you know that. I don't know that. Thought they were working on that last fall, but because we had information come back and they wanted to do more testing or look at more diameters or something, and that was about 4 months ago. I don't know. But really what I'm going to say is the Ehlers did a study on a water rate increase last year. I think you were the chairman there, and they're still projecting in the future a revenue shortfall, even though our two-stage water rates went up 88%. Now, those people that live on well and septic don't care, but I pay sewer and water. Okay, I'm on the system. So the fact that it went up 88%, I don't, and be honest, I need to have very hard data to prove why we need to do more water rate increases. But in Ehlers projections, they were looking at pretty large increases. So I went and pulled some numbers from the ACFR, the most recent one. In 2013, this village used 1.8 million gallons a day roughly, and now we're using 1.76 million gallons a day. We're not using any more water than we were 10 years ago. I mean, somebody should ask a question, why? That seems crazy to me. I know the village is growing, it's not growing fast, but we have no more water. We're using less water than we did 10 years ago. Maybe we really need Richfield to get going, right? Also, the total customers in 2014 were 5,359 and only 5,678. We've only added 319 customers in 10 years. Is everybody moving out where you guys live in the country and having sewer or water and well and septic? Because we seem to be putting in these subdivisions, but we don't get any more sewer or water customers. I mean, I don't know. And I'm concerned about that because, again, I'm on sewer and water, and I keep seeing water projects going on where we're borrowing debt to do water projects out there. And I know some of it's through a TID, but it's still borrowing. Are we going to have money to do the deferred maintenance we need to do on the sewer and water that we have in the ground for 40 years? Bob can answer that for me. The sewer, 2014 customers were 5,603, and now it's 55902. So I've only added 300 sewer customers in 10 years. So, I mean, I'm just bringing these up as concerns. What are we going to do to fix the aging system? We keep adding things, right? We keep adding stuff. I mean, where's it going to end? We're not using any more sewer, any more water really, or any more customers than we did 10 years ago. That'd be interesting to know why that is and if there's a way to correct that. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on. We have no unfinished business. New business A, award of a professional service agreement to Foth Infrastructure to prepare bid documents for Well 7 rehabilitation for an amount not to exceed $37,200.
Excuse me, yeah, these microphones are a little live today.
What is with these? Echoey today.
Yeah, there's an adjustment we could do back there. I'll just,
Well, no, we'll just, don't worry about it, as long as we don't get complaints from outside.
so this is a project for the rehab of Well 7. We want to do these rehabs on about a 10-year basis. That's actually from the DNR. So that's the primary driver for doing this work. The idea with the rehabilitation is just to look over the entire well and identify areas for rehabilitation, including the well itself through chemical treatment if necessary, and get those documents prepared and ready to go for bid. You'll notice that we did do an RFP for this project. So in the past, a lot of projects had been awarded to Foth without a lot of competition. A couple of these last two projects in the water utility that we've had, we've done the RFPs on. In this case, Foth did come back with the lowest bid, and we're looking to award these design services to them.
Ready?
I'll make a motion to award the professional services agreement to Foth Infrastructure to prepare bid documents for Well 7 rehabilitation for an amount not to exceed $37,200.
A second.
I have a question.
Go. Bob.
I'm not asking for 10% contingency, but why doesn't this have it? It seems like other. What's the rhyme or reason on the 10%? I know complexity of a project and the cost will.
I think since this is primarily just design, and not like the construction admin portion of it where there's more variables, that we don't feel like we need it here. It's a not to exceed as well. So, hopefully of the 197 hours that they quoted, we don't need all those.
So you do know that those 10% contingencies are a bugaboo of mine, right?
Yes, I'm well aware.
We all are aware of that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question. Why, so we've done this typically every, how many years? 20 years?
For 10 years.
Every well, every 10 years, and that is to maintain the wells to standard, correct?
Yep.
And
Yep.
if we didn't do this, there's a chance, something would happen?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is water quality. That's probably the primary reason that you do these. The main focus of the work would be any chemical treatment you need to do on the well itself. But these projects also look at the infrastructure in the well house and look for any upgrades that are needed there.
Okay, I just looked at the hours. That's a lot of hours, 197 hours.
Yeah, the wells are complicated systems with a lot of working components. So it definitely takes some time. But it is a requirement, a DNR requirement to do these. So that's why we're bringing it forward, because it's been that amount of time with this well.
Okay. Rick, anything?
Yeah, there was something just glaring to me again, is that the amount of hours were so
discrepancy?
different between the two again, just like in the culvert bids, and
I think this one is
seeing a trend here.
I think this one's a little more easily explained because Foth has kind of a long history with us, and probably knows our system better than anybody else at this point. So they don't have to start from scratch. And the knowledge that they built with their team over the last 10 years or however long they've more or less been our primary consultant, is working favorably for them as we start to do these RFPs.
I read their proposal and they were hitting on that quite often. The
Yeah.
continuity. They're currently working on well number,
They're currently working on well 7 and 2 generator projects.
yeah, okay.
And they're also working on well 12 and tower 4 and wrapping up tower 3 as well. So
So we're seeing the advantage of that continuity, the familiarity, but the other thing too is we still want to go out for bids on these things because sometimes firms can take advantage of that too.
yeah, and that's why these last couple, we have gone out to bid, and we'll continue to do so for the water utility projects. But again, that knowledge that Foth has from working with us, I think even as we go out to bid, it's still benefiting them. There may be a point where that decreases over time, especially if we have a series of projects where they're not winning the bids.
Any further comments? If not, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Item B, award of a contract to the Southeastern Wisconsin Watersheds Trust in the amount of $20,250 for education and outreach.
So this is an annual contract. You should be familiar with it from past years. As part of the MS4 permit, we're required to do a certain amount of education and outreach. And this organization is kind of specifically built to deliver that for municipalities. Last year in 2024, we did try to get some additional bids from engineering consultants, and it just doesn't work out in our favor. And we had to continue with them last year. And I mean, they're really kind of special built for this purpose and the only game in town to do this. It's definitely not the type of work that we're equipped to do in-house.
Ready?
I'll move approval of the contract to Southeastern Wisconsin Watershed Trust in the amount of $20,250 for education and outreach services.
Second,
The only comment I'll make on this, I remember this when it first came out, like 12, 13, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
It was $5,000. And remember they had a dog or something, like a little cartoon dog who was
yeah,
this is the same thing.
the
It just-
dog got pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was actually a big jump last year. I think it went from 14 to 20, and then it just went up like a couple $100 this time.
But you have to do it. It's required.
No,
Is-
it's necessary, but I don't like it.
So the company that's doing it, is this a private entity?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit.
It's a nonprofit.
I thought it was a for-profit, but I could be wrong.
Nonprofit for $20,250, okay. What's, I probably seen these, like Terry, you mentioned the dog and stuff like that. How, do they go out and disseminate this stuff or?
It's a lot of social media, getting articles published in different publications, and then actual outreach at events and that sort of thing. So they'll do tabling at appropriate community events. At the end of the year, you get a report back from them that gives you the metrics on everything they've done. And then you take that information and you put it into your annual MS4 report.
And the theory is now you have an educated public, which they would understand why dollars are being spent to do this stormwater management.
And they don't put things down storm drains. There's a lot of work on that. And fertilizer and near watersheds and
Okay, I haven't, it's all fine. I just haven't been out there looking for this
Yeah.
stuff.
you know what? I don't know if it's fine, but if it's required, we have no choice. So
Well, and I hate it when that type of overreach again that we get into, forced to do that, so.
we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on to C, award of annual tree planting contract to Dan Larson Landscaping for an amount not to exceed $29,250.
So last year, we went through the whole comprehensive tree plan development project and identified a 5-year plan to plant all of the vacant tree sites in the village. There's an estimated 306 sites that are vacant. The bid this year will be what's kind of reflected as year two in the graphic that's shown in that plan, and fill 90 vacant sites. So we conducted the bid and Dan Larson came in low. It was a nice tight bid in this case, so we feel good about that and are requesting the award to Dan Larson Landscaping.
Committee?
Hold on. I move approval of the tree planting contract to Dan Larson Landscaping for an amount not to exceed $29,250.
Second.
We've used them before, correct? Or not correct? We have.
Scott's-
Scott's nodding.
They were not the contractor last year. Is that right? Yeah.
How did our trees do last year? Did they survive and we were happy with the contractor? For everybody watching, he's nodding yes.
He's just being a bobblehead
One,
tonight.
1 year warranty on these?
Yeah, you can.
One more question, you will.
Is it just 1 year warranty on these things?
I believe so.
Seem like a lot. Should be 3 years.
Oh, I've never heard 3.
No?
Anybody's
this would be
killer 3
our-
in 3 years.
This will be our third contract with Dan Larson this year. They've done a great job for the village. And as a matter of fact, we had a couple trees die like partway through last summer and they were around checking and replaced them on their own. We do, as part of the contract, we do require them to come back at 1 year and replace anything that's dead. And they've been good about that as well. So.
Where do they source their trees from? Do we know?
The contract again is, it requires everything to be sourced within 100 miles, I think, of the village.
Cool. Yeah.
Just keep everything regional. I know I had a discussion with Kim Larson yesterday via email. They're sourcing some of the trees out of Chicagoland. Hackberry is one of the trees we're using, and that's sourced right out of someplace in Illinois. So, yeah, everything's supposed to be within 100 miles.
That's
In
kinda
the
neat.
past, Nathan has gone out and actually helped tag some trees that are going to be planted here. So, again, we keep Wachtell pretty involved in the situation and project as well.
Okay. Any more comments, questions?
Is our tree committee integrated into this whole thing as far as the selection that I see here? How does that happen?
Well,
How's that working?
the selection of trees,
Well, or,
like the variety of trees, or the selection of Dan Larson?
no, I mean, well, I guess I'm struggling on how our tree committee comprehensive plan fits into, here we are selecting somebody to put certain types of trees, certain type of locations, and wasn't our comprehensive plan,
The comprehensive plan outlined an approved list of trees, and this is drawing from that list. So the idea was that we needed to have a bigger variety of species in the village to avoid, future problems like we had with the ash in past years. So that's why you see kind of the wide range of trees that were selected for the bid. I don't know if that answers your question or if we missed the mark.
well, I know we spent a lot of time coming up with a comprehensive plan, and I know we wanted a citizen representative on that committee too.
Yeah,
Where is that, what's happening?
we talked about that. So I had the ordinance updated a couple cycles ago, meeting cycles ago. And we talked about, it might have actually been when you were out.
Sorry.
One of those 2 meetings. So we decided that we'd proceed with the contracts this year because the appointment couldn't be made. And then with the April elections that were planned, the thought was that it would probably be better just to wait on appointments until after that. So now that that's transpired and we'll be moving into this new cycle with the board, we'll be looking to make those appointments. I offered to bring kind of a report back to the committee if it's established at the end of the season to talk about the program. But in future years, we will go to that committee first and then bring the projects for award after.
Okay. Maybe when you think it's appropriate, I'd like to get an update on that committee.
Sure.
Any more comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. D, approval of application for Wisconsin DOT signals and ITS standalone program. What is that? Grant for signal traffic control improvements on County Line Road and Appleton Avenue.
So there's kind of a long story on this, this application. It was an application that the village made at some point 3, 4, 5 years ago. And it was actually awarded, but kind of in the absence of directors, kind of between Larry and myself, it fell through the cracks essentially. Scott and I rediscovered it here in the last couple months. And the original award said that, oh, village, you're supposed to be starting the consulting work on this project in 2025. And I was like, oh, well, that's an issue because I didn't budget for consulting work in 2025. So we reached out to the DOT and they said, well, why don't you reapply for it and kind of start the process over? So what we did is we took the application and we updated it with current day numbers. The program itself is designed to deal with traffic signals. And when we're dealing with traffic signals on connecting highways like this would be, there's a 90% reimbursement rate. So it's a pretty advantageous program if you can get the award. We do feel strongly, based on our conversations, that we'll likely get the award with this application. And that is some of our older infrastructure, so it'd be great to replace it.
And when will we find out if we are approved?
It would be later this year, and then it would likely be design in 2026 and construction in 2027. So the work is still a little ways out.
Committee?
So we were talking, Matt, that if there's an overage on that, how would that be handled?
Yeah, everybody's a little burned by the Maple and Lannon project, but this one is different, and we'll also be very conscious about what we request out of the project. Really what caught the big difference on Maple and Lannon and that project was that the village itself requested a number of changes to the projects that weren't covered costs, which resulted in us paying essentially all of that extra share for the project. If we stick with the project as it's identified here, and maybe there are some small changes that get covered as we work with the state on finalizing it, but we can still adjust budgets, but making sure that whatever we add is covered by this and we get the 90%.
I'll entertain a motion, then we can have more discussion.
Okay.
I'll move approval of submitting an application for the SISP grant for the signal traffic control improvements to County Line Road and Appleton Avenue.
Thank you, trustee Miller. I second that.
Okay, further discussion? Bob?
So this is strictly signals, not geometric, in case we
Right.
have to increase queue lengths. We're not anticipating anything like that.
Yeah, nothing with the roadway other than markings. So some of the things that it's going to cover is new poles and signal heads. There'll be a signal head over every lane with this project. Reflective backplates, I'm just kind of reading through a list here. New street lighting, flashing yellow arrows. It'll have preemption for emergency vehicles and
Okay, you're adding preemption. You're getting rid of the loops. Will this be video detection?
I believe they'll be replaced, but there is video as part of this as well. Yeah, reinstallation of video vehicle detection.
Good. Thank you.
Matt, you're going to have to remind us, or whoever's on this committee moving forward, what you just said. We cannot change the parameters of this. We're going to end up like Maple and Lannon Road.
Yep.
Nobody's going to remember that, seriously, 6 months from now. So, I mean, I would really make a note of that too.
Yeah.
Every time we talk about this, it's going to happen.
It's at a turning lane.
Yeah.
Well, as long as I'm here, I'll remember it.
Just a question, this is the only light that we control or that we own on County Line Road? Is that
I
right?
got a little topic in my director's report. Yeah, I've got a little topic in my director's report to talk about the rest of county line. So we have some.
I know some is DOT controlled and some is,
Yeah, there's other jurisdictions involved. It's kind of a complicated stretch of road for traffic control.
Further comments? We'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on to E, report on the 2025-26 municipal salt agreement.
So with this item, we're reporting on the salt that we've committed to purchase for the next winter season. Historically, we've done it this way where we've reported on the action that we've taken. I think just thinking about the process for next year, what we'll probably do is ask for authorization to do that ahead of time. The issue that we deal with is that the DOT gives us a very short window to respond from the time that they open up the ordering to when they're due, and it typically doesn't fall in line with the committee cycle. So I'm thinking in the future, we'll bring this item maybe in February and give our best estimate and ask for authorization. So we're just doing it this way one more time. You can see by the report that we're committing ourselves to between 1,500 and 1,800 ton of salt. And, you know, last year and in previous years, we made some pretty nice commitments with salt and being commodity wealthy. That's something that you've heard Scott and others talk about. And we were able to make a bigger order last year and bring in 2,700 ton. That allowed us to keep salt at our Fond du Lac Dome and also fill up the new campus with salt as well. So what this order is doing is essentially replenishing what we used this year and bringing us back to that level. We do think that, you know, we want to continue evaluating the effectiveness of both sites and how exactly we use the Fond du Lac storage facility in the future. The thought is, and still is, that in bigger storms and more frequent events, that will be useful for routes and refilling that are on the kind of west and northwest corner of the village. The way things worked out this year, we didn't really need it that much. So perhaps down the road, and especially if trends continue like they have been, there'll be opportunity to have smaller orders of salt and draw that down potentially. But just for, you know, quick information, we provided the report on the salt that's been used over the last 25 years or so. The last 2 years have been some of the lowest in terms of salt use and the number of operations over that entire time. So we want to be conscious of that. And if that trend continues, then, you know, certainly there's a possibility that less salt will be needed. But for now, we kind of want to maintain that level that we established last year and hopefully work through a couple seasons where we've got these bigger events and maybe more frequent events and see if that can really be a benefit for us.
That is the lowest number of all the years you've tracked here. The 1,473, is that pounds? Or
Tons.
pounds of salt? But does that is that because we're using brine more too? How does that reflect in this number?
Yeah, it's a combination of the number and type of events and then the introduction of brine too. We showed you a report from our telematics system, Precise, a couple of meetings ago as well, and showed how we can track like individual trucks and how they're distributing salt and brine. And Scott and his crew have done a really good job of trying to be conscious of how we're using salt in combination with brine and being intentional about spreading it and only spreading what we need to. So I think you're seeing all three of those things kind of work together for those lower numbers.
Committee?
The brine, the salt needed for the brine comes out of this stockpile.
It does not.
It does not.
Yeah.
That comes from off-site.
It's a different contract. So this is the big state salt contract for our general road salt.
So maybe.
There were a couple, we bought some, for the brine, we use solar salt, and we bought it from a couple of locations last year. We could do the same this year. It's a little too early to tell. But the solar salt is a lot cleaner, and runs a lot more efficiently through the system, and causes a lot of efficiencies in terms of staff time, babysitting the system, and then also cleaning the system. So that's the reason that we're focusing on solar salt for brine.
I hear what you're saying about commodity wealthy and that, but I'm still looking at the numbers where the average annual equals 2,612 tons, and we have in storage right now over 5,050 tons. I don't see why we have to purchase salt this year. If you miss a year, are you out of it with the state?
No, you're not out of it. I think before, we had some conversations about, do we want to start drawing down and using some of that salt out of the Fond du Lac Dome, and reduce our orders substantially. But I think we just want to stay in this commodity wealthy position for another year or 2 years and really evaluate, first of all, that the trend with, winters as they've been continues. And then if it doesn't, how having that extra site and the extra storage benefits our operation. There may very well be a point in the near future where we do draw it down. But I think, what our thought is that, we'd like another couple years to try to work through understanding all the issues.
Using last year's rate, what is the salt going to cost us this year? Roughly.
Let me see.
Is it in there? Did I not read that?
It was about $90 a ton last year. And we're talking, say we do the 1,500, that was 135,000. If that's 3% higher, that's 139. There's another variable this year, and that's tariffs. We did receive a notice from the county that a lot of the state salt comes from Canada, and there's a possibility that tariffs will affect the prices as well.
I'd buy it this year.
Just seems like a lot of excess, but I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
With a motion.
We did one. For a report.
Oh, it's just for our information?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Okay, report on parks and wastewater truck purchases.
This is a real quick one unless there's questions, but we're just reporting back on the purchases. You'd given us the authorization to purchase the trucks. We were able to get competitive bids and did make those purchases. What you're looking at in the agenda item is just the amount of the vehicle itself. There's still some upfitting to those trucks that will be done through other purchases. And that will use up the rest or the majority of the remaining budgets on those truck purchases.
Should be within budget, though.
Should be within budget. Yep.
Okay. Any questions, comments? No? Okay, and we move on to the director's report.
All right, I highlighted a few things here to talk about. High Point Pass went through the approval process with the board, but we're waiting on final village attorney approval to proceed with the contracting portion of that. And what's hanging that up is the final transfer of land for the right-of-way acquisition to build the road. It's just in the final steps of the purchase process, and the village attorney is working with Truck Country and the Holy Hill Storage on that transaction. So once that's complete, we'll be able to award that work and get it started. Plan there is again to start this spring and hopefully get through substantial completion by the end of August or so. Next item highlighted here is PACER ratings. So this is the first year in a number of years where the village has done the ratings in-house. The ratings were completed basically in March. of this year with the engineering tech staff, given the criteria that WISDOT has established. So we've done the initial inspection, and then we plan kind of a quality control check, especially on roads where there's been a dramatic change from the pacer in 2025 to 2023. That's an every 2-year cycle. So I'm anticipating that at the May meeting, it's crazy that we're talking about a May meeting already, but next meeting in May, to have a report on how that went. Just very preliminarily, it looks like good news in terms of the overall rating. This could change a little bit, but what I was looking at today was an average segment rating of a 6 out of 10. So it's a 10-point scale, and that compares to the 2023 pacer of about 5.7. So the investment in the roads is definitely starting to pay off, and I think especially with the work this year and next year with Division Road and all the ARIP, we should really see that kind of turn in the right direction in a bigger jump.
A quick comment on that. When you say average, so how many really bad, like 1s and 2s do we still have? Do we know?
I didn't look at that
We'll
too
get a
carefully.
copy of the
Yep,
paper.
yep, I'll
Okay.
bring, the reports are all available on the Public Works website, and we'll do the same this time around. But I just got the data, so I just did a quick average and
Just curious.
thought I'd preliminarily mention that at the meeting. I'd say, you know, the 1s and 2s are pretty rare, but the 3s and especially the 4s are quite common. There's a lot of roads that are kind of in that 3 to 4 and especially 4 range.
Okay.
We talked about well 7 already actually during the meeting, so I don't need to mention too much more there. Wanted to mention all the different spring work that's going on in highways. It's a busy time of the year once we are kind of through the snow season. So there's a lot of work going on around in terms of litter cleanup, trash pickup, repairing sod damage, potholes, cleaning and sweeping islands and walk and paths and that sort of thing. So the crews really get out there and hit it hard on the roads and in the parks. And grounds here around facilities to get things cleaned up. So you'll see quite a bit of that activity happening in the village. Road restrictions, like weight restrictions, temporary, we didn't this year. And that's actually one of the things I was going to talk about. Last year we had some seasonal restrictions on the ARIP roads. We decided not to do it this year. There were a handful of neighboring communities that did decide to do that. So we received a number of calls from different contractors working around here asking about temporary restrictions. But it's something that we'll evaluate kind of year to year.
What criteria went into deciding that we didn't want to do a temporary restriction?
I just think a lot of it has to do with how the frost comes out of the ground and how soft the ground is and the chance for freeze back and a lot of fluctuation. It seemed even enough and firm enough where we didn't have to do that. I'm not sure what the neighboring communities were seeing, different conditions for them that made them decide the other way.
So it was a weather thing.
It's essentially a weather thing and how warm and cold it is in the spring, and as things thaw out, how soft does the ground get and how might that affect the pavement? Couple other things to mention. We've had a few calls and emails about the ANR pipeline project. So that's a project that's not being conducted by the village. It's actually a utility called TC Energy. And I've talked about it at the meeting a couple of different times, but the work is underway now and residents are definitely noticing that work. I can just let's see if I can connect to the screen. What's wrong?
Is that the one by the county park?
It is. Maybe I can't connect to the screen. Oh, here we go. So it's a little hard to see, but the path of the pipeline, if you can see my cursor, it kind of comes up from the south. It's basically running up the western quarter of the village. So it's right here. It kind of, this is the old line, and then this is the new path. Kind of stays south of the freeway a little longer, and then cuts over here. So this is what you were seeing in the park last time, is activity around there. And then it kind of continues northwest a little bit through Germantown.
Okay.
So they'll be relaying all of that this year. It's an upsize of the pipe for better throughput in the system. Gas, yes. And then just a few other things I wanted to mention. Just a quick update on 2025 road construction. So we have contracts in place for the road program now. Those are all signed and ready to go, and we have a pre-construction meeting scheduled for next week or the following. So things are moving along well there. Hoping to get back the contract documents from the general contractor for the Rockfield Road ARIP Friday this week, and then move forward with that one. We are working on contracts still for seal coating for the year. For the second, for the phase one of the Pleasant View portion of ARIP. So the idea is that we got pretty good pricing on the Rockfield segment, and we can do the north half of Pleasant View, or it's actually like the north 2/3 of Pleasant View, but just keep that river crossing out of it to let that work continue, the design continue for the new crossing, and get that awarded and done this year as well. We also have Squire, which is an LRIP project that we're working on, and hope to get that out for bid as well, and the work done this season. Division Road, we talked about it a little bit, but we're still working through utility conflicts. We're working through acquiring the right of way, and that's a process that's taking some time. I think it's likely that actual construction on Division Road will be next year. We're still kind of holding out hope that we can do something this year, but time will tell on that. And I also wanted to mention that we have an updated construction projects section on our website. So if anybody wants to go and take a look at the Public Works and then Engineering Division website, click on construction projects, and we'll try to keep that up to date as things fluctuate throughout the year. Moving on to County Line Road traffic control. So, we're aware of some reports of issues with the flow on County Line Road being fairly segmented and tedious to get through. So we reached out to WISDOT because it's a little more complicated than it looks on first blush. The background on it is that all those intersections are controlled by different jurisdictions. There's village intersections, there's Menominee Falls intersections, there's WISDOT intersections. And at some point in the past 5-10 years, the village did a project in cooperation with WISDOT and with the falls to connect those 5 signals in that corridor to have some central control through an adaptive system that the state would run on our behalf. So what we found out when we reached out to WISDOT was that first, the people that were spearheading that adaptive system in the past are gone. and they're not really supporting that system anymore. So getting back to a point where we have some synchronization is going to require some additional work in coordination across a couple different jurisdictions, including the state. And Scott and I are kind of working with the falls and with the county on the best way forward. Another thought I've had is that we've got this grant project out here, and it's possible that, we could look at how that project could be used to address some of the coordination between the intersections as well. But it's a difficult thing that we need to work through.
I will. So the question is, we pulled fiber for that project.
Yep.
Is it obsolete? Not going to be able to be used?
I think it's obsolete in the fact that the system that it was pulled for is no longer functioning and sounds like is not going to function. Whether it can have a new purpose with a new system, I think that remains a possibility. But that's something we'll have to figure out here. The bad news is that, the system that those 5 intersections relied on, that everybody kind of agreed in the area to work with the state on, the state isn't supporting it anymore. So we're kind of back to square one.
Well, that's news to me. I mean, everybody was concerned with the proximity of those controlled intersections. And they said, well, we're going to integrate all of them, and that's what the fiber optic was for, so we could create platooning. If you do the speed limit, you get to the next light, it should turn green. So this is news to me that now, because sometimes I can hit it where you hit green all the way, and I'm thinking, okay, must be certain times of the day that they have that up and running, but not the case. They're all independent, huh?
They're all independent. I mean, provided that we don't get support from the state on an integrated system, it could be just a matter of syncing up time schedules, time of day schedules to work better. But again, we've made the initial effort here and are continuing to kind of engage with the stakeholders to try to fix the issue.
Let's just add 5 roundabouts to that corridor.
Any other questions about that one?
No, but interest now.
Yeah. Real quick then, last couple things I wanted to mention. We had a very high volume of complaints about waste management this month. You'll see it in the complaint log. But they had some really serious issues with service affecting residents. So Heidi and I have had some conversations with Waste Management. I did look at their contract. I mean, just for some background information, we're in year 5 of 7 of an agreement with them. In terms of the contract itself, I'd say it's generally pretty favorable for us in terms of pricing, in that, we've had this contract over a period of 5 years now and had a cap on inflation in a time when inflation's been relatively high. So in that regard, I think it's worked out okay for us. There are requirements in there for response times on missed routes and communication and things like that. And if these service issues continue, that's something that we'll have to watch pretty carefully. But we did get a commitment from them to do better outreach with citizens when there are missed collections, especially so they know when to expect the next collection. That's often, it's one thing to miss it, but then to not know when it's coming tends to really rub people the wrong way. And, they're talking about staffing being an issue. So they committed to doing some backup training and training more folks on our routes, so that when people call in sick or leave the company or whatever the case might be, they have more people ready to go on our routes.
I have a comment. I mean, Waste Management's not my favorite company, and I fielded a ton of calls in the last month. I think they missed an entire area and didn't tell people they weren't coming back till Monday. And all the time I've been on the board, Waste Management has been a bit of a pain in the butt. And I don't know who the current manager is, but he has been, except for when the contract is up, you do not see him, you cannot get a hold of him. And I find that very irritating. And now I do understand, I think we should look outside Waste Management again in the next 2 years. And what happens every time we do that is Waste Management ends up still being the better deal because they control tipping fees. I mean, that's the dump. So no matter what your firm is collecting garbage, you're going to pay the tipping fee that they set. And that's what we encountered over and over again every time we tried to look outside Waste Management. But I think just to be transparent, we should do it again. And there has to be something in there where if they are consistent at missing, to me, that suggests they're too cheap to hire enough drivers to have substitutes. And that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think, just trying to understand their business, maybe it's, it's partially that we have had that cap on inflation. So they're probably paying a relatively, low rate, to their, to meet our needs. And if they had received the inflation that happened in the market, then, maybe they would be better situated to staff those routes. I don't know. But I agree. I did do a little research on what different municipalities do in terms of some of those language, those clauses that you can have to, have some sort of check when issues like this come up. And I think there's opportunities to do that. I do agree with you also that, whatever we collect is going to end up there as well. And they do have those tipping fees. So I think it would be a good exercise to go through and see what happens. But I do think it's likely that because they're so close and everything is going to end up there anyway, that it'll be pretty hard to avoid them.
So there are other collection companies.
Sure.
A couple of them around here.
Yeah.
You see their bids.
My experience has been favorable with Waste Management. A couple of months ago, they missed mine. Called somebody, got them relatively quickly. They apologized and they said, we'll be out there tomorrow morning. And they were. So just
Yeah.
personal experience on my end.
They knew who you were about.
Right. Yeah, that's why
said
they
yeah.
missed it the first time.
Yes, Trustee Warren.
Yes.
We'll be there tomorrow.
I didn't use the T word.
Now, in my neighborhood, they've missed, for whatever reason, but everybody just leaves the bin out and they do come by the next day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, nobody panics till after another 24 hours have gone past.
Yeah, and that is their obligation to come the following day. They have 24 hours basically from the miss.
You get calls from constituents about that?
Yeah, from, not just in my district, just people who are really aggravated.
I've never
And
had,
their garbage is sitting there, real
I've never had a,
garbage like that. Oh my. Those are the only calls I've really got in the last month.
man, I never got a call on that.
Not a single snow call this year, but garbage call.
Yeah, I didn't get any calls.
Well, I'm happy about the snow calls, that
I know
there were none of those.
some of those.
Last thing I was going to mention is that last year I did a kind of a spring informational meeting to talk about the different services and projects that Public Works was doing in the village. I'm going to plan one of those again. I'm thinking late April, kind of after the April meetings are over, maybe that last week, to do a public meeting and just have people come in and we can talk about what's planned in the village this year.
I think those are a great idea because we're probably one of the more active departments that affect everyone. That's just to have that once or twice a year is a great idea.
How's the Public Works building working?
Working very well. Yeah, the efficiencies that we see there are really fantastic. I mean, one of the biggest areas that I think I've noticed is the improvements in the shop and the ability to work on multiple pieces of equipment in different bays. And, the lifts and the things that are in place there that really are a big benefit there. But having everything under one roof, I mean, that can't be dismissed either. I think, overall, it's been very positive in that building.
You attracting new employees because of the building, that they want to work there?
Well, luckily, we haven't had too many vacancies.
How about the recycling center? Is that going well?
Yeah, actually, yesterday was the first day of the summer hours. So it'll be open Tuesdays and Thursdays. I think it's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I don't want to say the hours, I'll say it wrong, but traffic was a little slow. We've issued about 2,000 permits. So I think we started that in October, maybe. Yeah. So I think a fair number of the village residents have those permits. We'll really kind of get our test as it warms up a little bit, the next couple of weeks, and people start coming in for compost and that sort of thing. So far, it's been a little slow.
Okay. Well, that's everything from the report, unless there are other questions. Our next meeting date would be May 7th at 5:30. Does that work for everyone? Okay, so it'll be 5:30 PM on May 7th, which of course is a Wednesday. Any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:26 PM. Thank you, everyone.